Hi, it's Colleen Schmidt from Divination Counseling Service, here today to present the solar eclipse, or the new moon of June 10th, 2021. So we're going to use, as always, the Washington, D.C. as our location. So if you happen to be located anywhere else in the world, this chart will still apply to you, but it will have different angles, meaning it will have a different ascendant, a different descendant, a different midheaven, and a different IC. So the wheel of the chart may look different, but as you will see from this video, many of the aspects applied to this solar eclipse or new moon chart, however you want to look at it, will be in play regardless of where you live. So before I begin, as always, I like to take a moment for gratitude to thank, first of all of my subscribers. Thank you so much for subscribing. And mostly, thank you for watching this video. And if you're not a subscriber, please subscribe, give it a thumbs up, helping the channel to develop. So I really appreciate that. I really appreciate what you guys are doing out there. So I appreciate you. My moment of gratitude is for you. Thank you. So with that said, I want to jump in, and I'm going to first, as always, look at Janus. I did leave up the trans-Neptunians, but basically no asteroids and no dial. When I get to solar fire, I really want to jump right in, particularly to that dial. There's some really interesting things there. So let's go and have a look at what we've got to deal with. I'm back, you can tell because we've got all this stuff here. So I'm actually looking at, again, Washington, D.C. And I want to point out something here that I already wrote about, and that is the fact that we have a Cancer rising on this chart, and Cancer is the moon. That's what rules Cancer, is the moon. So the moon and the sun making this conjunction, new moon, in the 12th house of this chart. So a couple of things. First of all, people are quiet about how they feel, or they're keeping it to themselves because the moon is in the 12th house. The sun being there is about wanting to work alone, or working in the back room somewhere, or working behind the scenes. Okay? So isn't it funny? We're working behind the scenes and we're keeping our emotions under wraps. Now, because this is an eclipse chart, and I do say this often when I'm working with eclipse charts, that we are looking at something that occurs literally over a period of time that can last 12 weeks or longer. Because we are all already feeling this sun-moon conjunction because it's an eclipse chart. So long before, weeks before, and then weeks after, we will continue to see and feel the results of this solar eclipse. Solar eclipses, as I've mentioned before, are asking us, well, all eclipse charts really, are asking us to mature, to grow up, to evolve, to let go of things from the past, and to move forward. Now, what's really doubly interesting here is the fact that the sun and the moon are in a house that is intersected. That means that Taurus is on the cusp of the chart. And of course, it turns to Cancer before it even leaves that house. So that means that the sun and the moon are learning about Taurus factors, okay? And this could relate to money, a value system, to beauty and what we look like, because remember that Taurus is ruled by Venus. So you get the idea, simply put, too, that sometimes we have to learn to work before we can understand. And Taurus is a working energy, whereas Gemini is the gathering of information. So in order for us to gather the information, we have to really do the work. Well, especially in this day and age. Can't just take things from what we see on the surface, not any longer, but to really research and do the homework. And this can also be true with regards to goals and working and preparing ourselves in order to understand. So I thought that was really, really interesting. It is the DC chart. I'm not quite sure how that will affect DC, except for to say that I am under the impression that this is going to be a short session for that government. And I know that Biden, the president, isn't even going to be there. So it is interesting because it really does indicate that things may be going on behind the scenes and that people will, even in Congress, have to work on their own and perhaps not show their hand. The other thing I see here, and this is a big deal, is the node Sirius. And again, Taurus is about working, working it through or working, especially, with money. And one of the issues is that mothers, particularly mothers of young children, have to, in many occasions, have now had to work alone. Okay. And even though you're looking at something that's 8 degrees and 9 degrees away, it still kind of falls a little bit toward the center of the Adamitas to the sun and moon. And it feels like they're stuck, or they want to be. And what I mean by that is when Adamitos is very prominent anywhere, there is this ability to be very, very firm. And apparently, from what I've been hearing, there are a number of people, and I think women mostly, who have been very firm about what their needs are in order, and here we go again with Taurus, to nurture the family, to be the home. They're the central figure in the home very, very often. So they have to keep the home fires burning. And so we have this mother's node. And it also be people going to see parents that they haven't seen for a very long time, particularly elderly parents who may be isolated themselves. So I wanted to bring that up. A couple of other really, really interesting points here are the fact that the sun and the moon both trine Saturn, and they both square Neptune. Okay? The trine to Saturn is great for self-discipline and organizational abilities. And, you may have keeping your emotions, here we go again, deeply under control and kind of staying on top of emotional, particularly outbursts and things of this nature. So we're probably not going to hear too much, thankfully, about this kind of bad behavior. However, with Neptune squaring, there's a sense of, particularly now, let's look at it emotionally. There's going to be moods and feelings that maybe one of the reasons you don't express them is because you're not even really sure of them. Because there's a great deal of uncertainty, even in our directions. And we're going to get into that a little bit later with the direction that our lives are going when it comes to the sun squaring Neptune. So we're not always going to be certain or sure of what is actually occurring or taking place. It's almost like there's weird stuff going on, but we know it, but we don't know it. So there's kind of illusionary factor that could be taking place. The other thing is that the sun squaring Neptune will often have each of us questioning our life directions. And if indeed we are on the right path. So those are really, really obvious. Some other things going on. Mars has some really interesting uh, aspects in this chart. In this particular case, the DC chart, we're looking at Mars in the second house, which, as we know, is the house of self-worth, finances, and and there's pressure there. No surprise. This is a rough time for many, many people. And there's a lot of uncertainty when the Mars and Neptune are in trine. But one of the issues that I feel that we need to be concerned with, and Neptune then also being off of this midheaven, would give us a lot of confusion about our own directions. Okay, particularly as this is the Washington, D.C. chart, because Neptune is never clear. It does show our compassion for the less fortunate, but it is an uncertain and insecure place. But what concerns me is the trine to Mars, where underhanded actions are possible. And this goes in any chart. Just check the houses to see where they're taking place. In this case, it's money uncertainties and what's happening with money. And the interesting thing is we've got bills that seem to have stalled. And some of it is nefarious actions, the gaslighting, the lying, and just being obstructive. So these things are Neptune Mars because they have no real direction, if you will, or the direction is purposely diluted. Okay, now this is going to be true regardless of what chart you're looking at. Okay, it can be good for spiritual stuff, though. All right, let me get my pen here. You can tell I'm back. Okay, I have my pen. So a few things. Okay, one of the reasons why Neptune is more nefarious here is because of the sun and the moon in the 12th. And remember that the sun in the 12th and trining Saturn, okay, see right there, there is this sense of being more self-oriented, okay, or looking toward yourself. The problem is that Mars in trine to Neptune works better if you're doing things for other people. So if you're in a service position, this could actually be good because helping yourself would be about helping other people. Okay. The other thing about the Mars to Neptune, which is also highlighted by the sun squaring Neptune, is the fact that people will not have a lot of energy. Well, if we have a lot of 90-degree days, that would explain that. But it is kind of warning you that energy levels will not be all that great. Okay, so we're not going to be an Energizer Bunny in the next month or so, because again, this has already started. And I can already tell you, we've already begun experiencing lazy days because it's just too hot. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. The other dynamic here that's really worth a look is the Mars opposite of Pluto. Okay, Mars is not in a great place in Capricorn. I mean, in Cancer, because it actually does better in the opposing sign of Capricorn. So let's discern that. It doesn't do as well in this position. The Pluto, okay, being in Capricorn, and they are in opposition only 3 degrees apart, is kind of indicating, and notice that it's the resources. Resources are changing. Value systems are changing because there's a transformation that's is related to basically all the resources. Okay, so our example, you'd have to pay more for insurance, depending on certain things. That should definitely be a factor here. Let me check this out. And I'm back. Yeah, I actually turned off the air conditioner too, so I hope the video is going to be okay because usually I would turn the air off before I began. So this will be a little experiment to see just how distracting it is to have an air conditioner on because it's hot here. I am in the hot area of the country, one of the hot areas. But in any event, let's go back to this Mars Pluto. Okay, so Mars Pluto, all right, is about interpersonal struggles. And some of that will have a lot to do with value systems and worth if you're in this area. You would have to look at the chart of where you are to see that Mars Pluto struggle going on in your chart. Where is that happening? There's a lot of resistance in the actions and transformations, and some of the resistance could even be low energy, okay, because of the trine to Neptune. There could be a lower energy force here that might be a factor. There's pressure from volcanics for, again, trying to get back to work, but maybe not feeling that you're being valued, or that there's a strong desire or need to make money, and but it is or isn't available. So there's a lot of struggles going on. Pluto is quite powerful where it is. The Mars is not. And that's another reason why our energy level will not aid us in what is going on over the next, I'm going to say, month or so, because again, this could go on for another 6 weeks after the date, just because it can be a part of even the new moon coming in July, because it is an eclipse and it has a very strong and lasting effect. But you can never ignore the fact, even though Pluto's in retrograde, that Pluto is asking us to change. The eclipse chart is asking us to grow up. So between the transformation of Pluto and the fact that we're in an eclipse overall speaks volumes. Some things that we need to look at. So with that said, I don't want to dwell too long on this I want to actually jump because there are some really outstanding things that showed up in the next chart. So I'm jumping right into it. And here, I don't want to spend any time really looking at the asteroids, although I will say that Cupido did, and you can see it on this chart as well, does fall from the 6th. This is like work organizations. It can be families, buildings, and it relates something to our service day to day, but it is right off of that descendant. So it also has to do with who we're interacting with. And I also wanted to point out that Venus, which there's a tremendous amount of wonderful energies from Venus, lots of trines and sextiles. I believe Venus is, us trying to be peaceful and to deal with Hades, which is, could be dirt, could be cleaning things up, could be the disease itself. But it's just almost like people are being nice and complimentary and kind. And in some respects, they could even be spending money on themselves. Okay. Especially in this chart. Okay. Uh, Making themselves look good, so to speak. So I want to jump, as I did, back to the other. So just wanted to show that because that was right there. I did go through Neptune, but I never bothered really discussing some of the other things that were showing up. The Hades Chronos is there, and it can be about mistakes of the past, particularly by those in charge. That could be a real factor. And some of those things can be made known to us because there were things that obviously, as with every government, but particularly the last administration, apparently there were so many things going on behind the scenes that we were unaware of that I think will become known to the people. And because of this eclipse. Now remember that the lunar eclipse was about receiving news. It was about getting news. So this actually might be continuing, because again, it's an eclipse, right through this particular new moon chart, this solar eclipse, if you will. So as we move into, because I want to keep going, I don't want these to get too long as they've been. I just wanted to show those things. I also want to point out that Vesta is at the IC down here with Demeter. Okay, so there's a lot of strategy about work and focus and goals, like a lot of looking into and focusing on goals. But there's still, I want to say, a lot of pessimism, gloom and doom, probably because of, people are just, we're not wearing masks, but can you trust everybody who's not wearing a mask? I mean, that's a big question. And the other concept is about privacy as we go back to work, and getting surprises related to work, good and bad, I hate to say. There's a lot of karma on it. And again, this is just DC's chart. So I'm not going to get into it too much because I don't like to spend a whole lot of time, because it's only a fraction of people that are going to look at it from DC. Okay. And I'm not a political astrologer, although I could be. I'm not. I'm trying to be a teacher of astrology here. And with that said, I would rather that you understand and learn that, first of all, Calypso up here is telling us that there's a lot we don't know. Boy, is that true. That's a real highlight in this chart, okay, whether it's happening on a personal level or the world stage, okay? So that's enough of that. Again, I don't want to spend I could spend so much time doing these charts, but I really don't want to, because I really want to stick with what I think that, I want to stick with what is in the chart that affects everybody. And that's easy to do if I work with a dial. Okay? Because on the dial, I'm just looking at axes. Okay? So the axis here, the sun moon, this is where we're looking, 19 degrees, 47 minutes of a mutable sign is Gemini. It would be on this side. And these are, of course, the midpoints to that. Now, the first thing that jumps off the paper here is this. Here we go, Uranus and Pluto. First, it was Mars and Pluto when we looked at the other chart. Pluto is not a quiet planet, okay? And apparently it is really, really affecting all of us right now. And though it's retrograde, it's just asking us now to really kind of mull over and retrospect the transformations that we know we need, or that we've already begun instrumentally changing within our lives. Everyone always keeps saying, we're going to go back to normal. No, we won't. No, we won't. We can't. We will be different. We'll go back. It might feel a little bit closer to normal, but the days of 2019 are long gone, and we cannot go back there, because time doesn't go backwards. It only moves forwards, and it doesn't move in a circle. It moves in a spiral. And nothing more reminds us of this than Pluto. Pluto-Uranus is warning you that there will be quick changes and quick transformation. I stressed in the last chart that there was a lot of news coming. And what happens when we receive a lot of news and stimulus is we change, we evolve, we grow, hopefully. Hopefully we become better. But sudden transformation. Remember that let's start with that. Saturn is our structures, but Uranus are like those kind of external structures. You know, the things that make us either free or not feel free. Uranus is a lot about freedom. Pluto is about transformation, and it's about understanding that there's only so much that we have control over. That ultimately, and that's the bottom line. I don't care what your ideology is politically. As somebody who can be highly political, I can tell you this: no one will ever stop progress, no matter how hard they try. They tried to stop the Industrial Revolution, but it didn't stop. Okay? The world wants to be green. I got news for you. Nobody's stopping it. It's going to happen. So there's this concept of where we are as a population or as a world population. And there are things within each of us that we've now evolved to a state where hopefully there's a greater understanding that we're not in control here. Not really. Nobody is. Pluto comes in and tells us that all the time. So I think it's great. I just wanted to point that out. The other thing that makes a grand appearance here, and again, this is only the Washington chart. You would have to look where you are to see if there is a vertexual or vertexual ascendant, they're ascendants, the EQ, the VX, they're all ascendants. They're all kind of looking around at the environment, ascendant, ASC. So this chart also features strong Neptune in the environment, and it goes right back to what do I do? How do I control this emotion? How do I react? How do we transform? What is my direction? Am I on the right path? Welcome to Neptune. So that was very interesting. Now, I'm going to get a little bit more asteroid oriented at this point. And I want to look at this point right here, which would be, let's see, what is it, 447? Yeah, it's 447 fixed. All right, so if you have something around 4 to 5 degrees of a fixed planet, you are being nailed by this eclipse. Okay? I have a lot there, so I speak from experience. This does not matter where you live. If you're in Australia, if you're in New Zealand, if you're in South America, you're still going to have this, okay? So you're looking at what is referred to as the axis. Now, in this particular chart, it makes an interesting, okay, so it'd be right there just so you can see this. It's a midpoint between business, Apollon is expansion, it's business in general, it's commerce, as they say. So Apollon, it's more than one, it's another interpretation, comes down to Cassandra, which is running with Letitia. So they're right here. Let me get my pen so that you can better see this. Okay, so these two are what I'm referring to, all right? So we have this guy, and we have these two, and this thing extends like that. So you can see that mathematically there is some kind of midpoint. May not be real close, but it's close enough. And one of the things that I would pick up here, especially with Letitia's, which would be exact to that, is, and this is something we really want to talk about, there's probably lots of advice going on out there. Okay. I can say in my own business, I'm at least working. Although one business is completely done, so it's kind of nice that I have another business to fall back on. But the Letitia's is a change of direction. Remember, we have already discussed that with our aspects to the sun. We have talked about that with the Mars, both in opposition to Pluto as well as its trine to Neptune. So I'm repeating a theme here. And the advice that people might be getting is about changing direction, whether it means going into a different business, which is something that I am actually working on. Although I've always had this business, I've always done what's called quote unquote body work. So I've always done something there. It's only now that I'm this point in my life, I don't want to do that anymore. And I'm old now. And I really, really want to build what I'm doing. I have such a passion about astrology and even tarot, which I do intend to do more with on the site because of the empowering aspect of them and how I think it can really benefit people. So I'm a good example of somebody who is, and it's interesting because I was a teacher of that. Now I want to be a teacher of this. Teachers are seen by Cassandra. So I'm able to use myself as an example here because I also have a lot here at this point. Okay? I won't go into it, but I will say it's a lot. And at that point, I can tell you that's really, really what's going on for me. I believe that this is happening not just to me, but to everyone on some level. Now, I might be an extreme case because there's a lot there. You might be having this even in your own life. This is something else that is very upsetting about people who say that people are just not working. I don't think that's what's going on here at all. I think that people are soul searching because they don't want to go back to the jobs necessarily that they came out of, that they are looking at this as an opportunity to check out what it might be like to change your direction. That's why dials are so cool, because I didn't have to go in and do the math. Sure, I could have done it, but I didn't, nor did I have to. I circled nymph because, well, that's what the word is. I only have a few letters there. There's not a glyph for it. At least I don't have one yet. But with this nymph, it's charm. It means that when people, remember I said Venus on the ascendant in DC? Well, maybe in this area more so, but all over the world, I think you'll see that people will be charming. But I also think that people are trying to figure out their path and they're seeking advice. And there could be more than one tone of advice, and it could be about more than one business. So it's really interesting that. And I had to show that because I have some personal experience there and I could speak strongly of it. Okay. Now, I also like, as always, for us to, mathematically, and we can do this right on this screen, you always go 2230. Okay. So again, no pen because I'm using a different computer. But 2230. So if I come here and I were to add in, or even subtract, because it would be the same. Actually, I'm going to add 447, which is actually 3447. You come up, wow, look at all these sevens there. Okay, 6. You get a 5677 or a 57.17. Does everyone understand how I did that? Because you're taking 60 seconds from this in order to make it come to the next degree point. Okay, so simple math. That's all you really need. So if I go to 57 and about 57, oh, can't do it there. 57, it hits, okay. On the more obvious, it's really, really close to Chiron. which is the planet of not following the rules, and and also right next to it, Kronos. Okay, so one of the things that might become uh, obvious to us is that people who are in positions of authority don't think they have to follow the rules. Again, it makes me really think there's going to be a lot coming out on our last president. And I don't want to get into that too much, but justice is down here. Okay. I'll get my pen. Let's go through it. Justice is in the sun moon point. There it is right here. Okay. Tisiphone. That's what we call it. And it's with Apollon. So it may be a little bit of justice regarding a business owned by an authority figure who thinks that they can make up the rules as they go, or that they don't have to apply with the rules. Now, realize, yes, this is DC's chart. However, this is going to be in play regardless of where you live. So watch out for people who are in positions of authority who perhaps feel that they don't have to follow the same rules as the rest, that they can do their own thing. And it would be regarding business. Okay. It also pulls in a health asteroid. And this could be played out by the fact that some people think they don't have to follow rules because of health matters or health issues, or we don't have to do that because we're under COVID restrictions or whatever. So that will play a role. Okay. That will also play a role in everything that is going on. So moving finally to the Aries point. Okay, so the Aries point does not really, but it does. I was going to say, wait, it did yesterday when I was doing my homework. Okay, here it is. It actually has a Hades. Great if you're doing research. I do research. It also felt good when I was studying yoga and then teaching yoga, because that has a lot of Hades involved with it, which is not only because it's old, an old system, which is Hades. It also deals a lot with sweat. I happened to be doing what was called hot yoga at the time. And I remember seeing all the Hades and going, oh, thank God I do this, because it's a great way to get rid of that energy and have it mean something that's not nasty. But the moon and Hades and the sun in Hades could be talking about people, man or woman, who are I don't know how to put it, who break rules, who are considered less than, I hate to say this, but they're doing all this stuff with the immigrants, and that might be considered a Hades aspect, because many immigrants have come into the country illegally, and that would put them into a category of illegals, and that could come under Hades. So it could be because we're doing a lot of work with them. The sun, the moon is our interaction with them, our connection to them. And that is a very good possibility. But I also know that we are still dealing with a health pandemic. I don't care, most of us are vaccinated. Well, in this state, Pennsylvania, which is where I live, a lot of us are vaccinated. I know the area that I live in, they made it so easy that I'm going to go with as high as 95% of the people that frequent the place that we socialize, that frequent the places, have all been vaccinated, because we all talk about it. So we're all open about it so that we know that. But the idea is that some people, and we go back to that Kronos and Chiron, maybe don't feel that they have to follow the rules. And I think it's really interesting that it was a very good golf match going on this weekend. And the person who was in the lead lost $1.6 million because they had to remove themselves from the program after the best day of golf they probably ever had in their life because they didn't take the shot. They had COVID. They had to be removed. I can't stress this Hades sun, Hades moon enough. And I can't tell you that Hades' mistakes and what a mistake he made and how much did it cost him. I just think that we need to think about that. We do need to think about how the disease, and the knowledge that we have regarding it is not just that it gave us restrictions. It's given us a different structure. We have to honor that because if we don't, we'll pay. Justice, Tiffany, is in the axis point of the sun and the moon. I didn't have to go to the Aries point to see this moon Hades, sun Hades, but I just thought it was fun because I love when there's repeatable themes in a chart. That's how I really work. That's where the validation is. That's where the oomph or the emphasis is of that chart. Now, we would also look to gather up this Aries point. And by the way, people, no offense, but I know we want this disease to be over with, but people are still dying or going to die. And maybe not as many in this country, but it's going to still happen. Orpheus is in the Aries point. It's not far away. It's just a few minutes outside of, which means it's in there. Now, if I take it down to 2230, roughly, let me go all the way. Okay, we come across to the fact that due to destiny, due to what's going on, and I like that the masks are not from this. They're not far from this, okay? But I feel like there's, this is destined here. These are the fates. So this hubris is here. And it's complicated. There's so many layers to this that we really need to look at what's going on in the world at large, looking at these charts. This is just one tool that we have, but it's really up to us to pay attention, to learn, to delve in, if you will, to what those complications are. There it is, right there. Just as clear as you can get. And it's there. I mean, like, boy, what is it, 10 minutes off from that line? I mean, it's really right there. Just as La Cremosa is also there. And it's really telling you that because things are so complicated and because they feel so destined by the fates, it's very, very complicated. It also is telling us that the seriousness of things that we're finding out are layers deep in intrigue, whether we're learning it about our own businesses, our own bosses, or whether it relates to the news that we might be hearing out into the world. Okay? So I'm actually going to leave it there. I want to make it simple and shorter, so hopefully I was able to do that. So I'm back. So hopefully, as I said, that you were able to, I didn't want to get too complicated. I didn't want to get too long. I want to try to keep my message crisp and clean so that we are gaining something from it and not getting all confused by it. Trying to play with that Neptune a little bit. My own Neptune is a factor. So I wanted to, as much as I can, be as clear as I can for you. With that said, I want to thank you for being here. And if you would, again, please subscribe, like, share, comment. I'd love to get this information out there, and particularly the empowerment of what astrology can be for all of us and how we can use it in our own lives every day. With that said, as always, I want to leave you with only happy readings. So please be well, take care, and again, happy readings to us all.